Mission Report 2, Ta-152, Bomber Interception over southern Germany. This is IL-2 412.2 with SAS Modact activator and only some custom mods added. I mainly added Link's beautiful Central Europe map because it has cities like Munich and Dresden on it, and the vanilla game does not feature any map with parts of Germany. That's why I often use the Bessarabia map for bomber missions. It has a coastline and is big. It's not much, but it's sufficient. Also, look at the result when you rotate Bessarabia by 180 degrees and compare it to North Sea. One thing I also use is command and control for what I call cosmetic flag. Real flag does have two major disadvantages. First, it does not fire in bad weather. Second, it tends to damage lead bombers, which completely screws up the bomber formations. The cosmetic command and control flag, on the other hand, is visible in every weather and does not have the risk to damage the wrong plane. The plane for this one was a Ta-152. I guess you could call it the Super Wolf. It's basically a 190 pimped for speed at high altitudes, with 30mm cannons. Thing is, the 152 is only really faster than a P-51 above about 8,400 meters, which equals roughly 25,000 feet. B-17s usually are at 21,000 feet or so, and Liberators even lower, which means we are operating at a suboptimal altitude for the 152. Takeoff was scheduled for 10:25 am at BQ-20. The combat wings were arriving from the west on a straight eastern course at the 22 line. So, all I had to do was climb to altitude and turn to 270, roughly above the beginning of the river in BM-23. The bombers would come into view soon enough, and then we would proceed with the usual procedure. Attack from strange angles, hope for the best, and run away from the Mustangs. After you're done shooting bombers, run away completely and land somewhere. So, how did it actually go? We took off to the east, turned to 300, and started our climb. I changed course to 270, above the river, as planned. I stopped climbing at an altitude of about 9,000 meters or 27,000 feet. The bombers were supposed to be at a maximum of 7,100 meters or roughly 21,000 feet, and the escorts roughly 500 meters above that. This would give me a kilometer or so in height advantage. At the time I was expecting the enemies to come into view, I banked to the right and left to see if they were already visible. And they were. I ordered my swarm to get in close formation and began to dive down on the bomber formation. A swarm of Mustangs at 10 o'clock low immediately noticed us, but that's business as usual. The first attack went great. A short burst was enough to cause fatal damage. The 30mm cannons are simply devastating. The second attack went well too. The first short burst missed, but the second one did fatal damage. Black smoke from a fuel tank always indicates a kill. The plane might go on for an hour or so, in extreme cases, but it will come down eventually. After turning left, I noticed two Contrails following us. Don't forget, that swarm of escorts did notice us. I turned into them to not give them the chance to get directly behind us. In situations like this, it is tempting to engage the Mustangs, but believe me, avoid fights with Mustangs at high altitudes. Even in a specially made so-called Höhenjäger, which would roughly translate into fighter for great altitudes. The Mustangs didn't seem to be too keen in following us directly, so I started to gain height again and began to overtake the bomber formation. While overtaking, another group of escorts arrived and head-on passed us without any engagement. Just seconds after their flyby, that fuel tank fire finally killed the bomber I damaged earlier. You can see it going down in the distance. While I was still overtaking, I noticed two contrails that had to be those two Mustangs that flew by after the first head-on passes. They were no danger to us here, but they would be if we dove down through the formation and came out the other side. That would put us right below in front of them, so I chose to try to scare them off. Usually AI evades downwards, which would be perfect since they lose energy and I don't really want to catch them anyway. In this case, they stayed at altitude, probably because my approach was so sloppy. I ordered my swarm to attack the two fighters, hoping they would distract them. My swarm did not chase the fighters away, and I was aware of the fact that multiple P-51s were following me at different distances. Still, there were 70 or so bombers right there, and I decided to re-engage. As I used to say, flying is about making the right decisions. This was way too risky. Don't engage with multiple P-51s around you. They will shortcut you and suddenly appear right in your back. Still, there I went. I applied a ton of lead for the slow-flying 30mm shells and hit him good. This does not look like much, but that's a 100% assured kill too. The bomber has a permanent fuel leak and will run out of fuel in 30 minutes or so. I guess in reality he could turn to Switzerland or something that is very near from here. And I knew this was going to happen. There they were. Luckily that closest one there was just slightly out of effective range. As you can see, this is a very close matchup. I was going at full power with MW50 enabled and closed radiators, and it's still super close. This chase went on for some time. Some more Mustangs joined in and went for my wingman. At some point, the Mustangs right behind me simply stopped chasing me. In reality, I probably would have turned home right at that moment when the Mustangs turned away. Check 6, be sure there's no one there, and get the hell home. But since this isn't reality, but IL-2 1946, let's go get some! Sometime after that long chase, two contrails appeared in a, for me, very bad position. 8 o'clock high. Damn it! I was ready to dive into the clouds. That small speed advantage I had would not have sufficed if they had dove down on me. But some other Mustang must have called for help or something, because those two dove down and chased something else. This gave me the opportunity for an unhindered attack. A short burst, lethal damage done. Now quick, climb up again. That kill did raise the attention of yet another swarm of Mustangs. One turned into me, but did not have enough altitude to catch me at all. The other three didn't seem to be too aggressive, but they were in a good position to get me if I dove down onto the bombers again. So I decided to try to chase them a little, in order to make them lose altitude. This worked with one of them, but the other two only turned around to get behind me. That made me see the following. He's not able to catch me, but basically stops me from doing anything else than staying up at 10 kilometers altitude or so. And at this point, I did a mistake. I should have used my speed advantage at this very high altitude of 10 kilometers and just should have run away. Nope. Charge! Fuel tank fire. And on the second attack, fuel tank fire. Classic. Arguably, two B-17s are worse a Ta-152, right? The Mustangs did a classic shortcut and ended up right in my back. You can try and get away, but it usually ends up with you hanging from the chute. When my fuel tank caught on fire, I immediately pressed eject, since fuel tanks in single-engine fighters tend to make your plane explode. I was still very fast though, and that makes it hard to impossible for the pilot to bail out. So I extracted the landing gear and the landing flaps to get a maximum of drag to slow the plane down as soon as possible. And there I was, in sudden silence. The result showed 4 kills, but it would have been 6. 2 of them just didn't hit the ground yet.